we're talking about a 20, 25-year span, somewhere between 65 and 90 that someone has to plan. So if you now, let's say it's me coming to you, what would be the first questions that you would ask? How does that piece look? Because I mean, it's so new how this thinking is. I mean, I've never really accounted how you think.
Let's take the human aspect of that. Okay, you as a human being and the way you show up in the world. The first point of departure, and I think the mistake a lot of people make let's say we meet for the first time. The first thing I want to do as an advisor is tell you, listen, don't worry, I've got all the solutions for you. I've got all the answers. I know everything. Wrong. I think as an advisor or the person that sits in front of you needs to accept that actually I don't know anything and we'll figure it out together. And that's where sometimes we call it the expert model. So I look at the expert and the expert needs to have all the answers. That puts the burden on me to give the result that you require. The solution to that, or the way it changes, is to say, well, how can we figure out together something that will work for you? So it also puts the responsibility of making a change.
And that's very similar to what we do as well.
100%.
In medicine, because it's also a discussion and say, but how would we change this together? Because we need to get the patient also on to take responsibility for what they're doing.
Correct.
And I think the old thinking was like, there's a tablet, take the tablet, it will make you better. That's
exactly.
wrong.
Yeah.
So that's very similar.
Very similar. So the point of departure is really to determine what is your state. Okay, state in terms of, are you in survival mode? Are you kind of getting by? Or are you sorted out? Kind of three simple stages or states that you can subdivide it into a lot of other stuff. But what I would do is to say, I could determine which state are you in. So if you are in crisis mode, it doesn't help that I sell you this 65 golden Labrador with my beautiful wife walking down, Blauberg Strand, with Tafelberg in the background. It's not going to work for you. I need to figure out what is the most logical step for you financially, and by that way, health, all the aspects of your life. So that's a coaching discussion. What is the logical next step for you to take? And that is what we work on. Forget about this halo moment in whenever that is. So let's just figure that out. And then the next step is to make sure, okay, so once we've made progress, so we get you out of trouble. So a lot of people don't want to look at debt counseling or consolidating debt, all that stuff. Let's figure that stuff out first before we even start thinking about saving money because the problem is, if this problem reoccurs again or continues occurring, whatever savings I have, and this is the problem I have with this 3-pot system at the moment. So I sit with this problem. The first time I have a significant amount of money and I can get my hands on it, guess what I'm going to do?
You're going to
feed it into this monster problem again.
Yeah. Just for our listeners out there, if you can tell us what the 3-pot system is again. So
it is new legislation that came out actually very recently. So in the pension fund legislation, which before you were basically very restricted in terms of how much of your pension fund money you could actually access. So the 3-pot system in very simple terms is now you can have actually access to a large amount and the rest can be invested in a certain way. And there's maybe a discussion that we can have at a different time and how that actually works. And the other one you're not allowed to touch at all. So suddenly, in a lot of people's worlds, a lot of capital will become available. Yet they sit with crisis mode. So if I don't address that. So that's coming back to your point. The next step, okay, so let's say, for instance, okay, you were in crisis mode. We managed to sort all your stuff out, and now you're in kind of getting by. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you don't regress again back into crisis mode. Very similar to what? So the guy was in ICU. So the first thing as a medical practitioner is to prevent that the guy goes back into infection and all those things. So that's what we have to do in terms of financial advice as well. So that's where unforeseen expenses, for instance, medical expenses, insurance. So there we start looking at, okay, are you adequately insured so you don't have to all of a sudden make a lump sum payment to kind of get you back to where you're supposed to be. be it healthcare, be it short-term insurance, whatever that is, and make sure that you're covered there. Again, if you're in crisis mode and you start paying insurance, what's the first thing people stop paying when you're in trouble? Insurance. Okay. So that's the aspect of human behavior that's often neglected. Only once you are then kind of securely in balance do we start to look at, okay, how do we get you in a state where you live the life that you plan to do? So none of the retirement conversation comes in there. If it is your choosing that you want to retire at a certain stage, then be it so. I think in many cases, and I think from your perspective, what you also see is that people say, well, 65, I'm actually still fine. I can work. And let's say in my case where I'm kind of mid-50s and I realize I'm going okay, a niggle here or there as everybody does, but the odds are that at 64 or 65, I can still have a productive life. So already now I need to start planning. So here's now where the expense planning comes in. Do I now say, do I rather than start allocating more of my cash flow into making sure that I'm okay when I'm 65? So I can then pursue that third career that I want to, or whatever I want to do. So your financial planning then entails, okay, what is it where I want to go and what I want to achieve? So be it, okay, now let's say I want to become a coach. So let's start educating myself now. And similar to in your field is that when you get there and you think you want to make a change, it's already too late. So these are kind of education, re-education, aligning yourself to where you want to be and changing my behavior towards that takes a long time.